So what happens when something that sounds like a totally wild conspiracy theory actually turns out to be a real documented plan? Stamped top secret and everything, by the highest levels of government? Well, today, we're digging into declassified files that prove that the line between a wild theory and a documented plan is sometimes terrifyingly thin. Let's get right into it. First things first, let's start with a big foundational question. Are conspiracy theories always wrong? I mean, the term itself gets thrown around a lot, right? It's often just a label to dismiss an idea without even thinking about it. It can just shut down a conversation before it even gets started. But is that always the right move? You've kind of got two sides to this. On one hand, you have the common view that these theories are just plain false, maybe even harmful, and totally unjustified. But on the other side, you have thinkers, like the philosopher David Cody, who argue that some conspiracy theories aren't just true, they're absolutely essential for holding powerful people accountable. To really talk about this, we need to be on the same page. So we're going to use this definition from legal scholars Cass Sunstein and Adrian Vermeule. Now notice how neutral that is. It doesn't say the explanation is false or that it's crazy. And if you think about it, if we accept this definition, then some conspiracy theories have to be true. I mean, why? Because powerful people do sometimes conspire to do things, and they definitely try to hide it. Okay, so let's jump from the academic world into the real world. Back in 1992, the U.S. government passed the JFK Assassination Records Act. Now, this law wasn't just about the assassination itself. It actually created a whole process to declassify a huge treasure trove of government documents from that entire era to give us all a much fuller picture of what was going on. The process of declassifying all this stuff, well, it wasn't some dramatic scene from a movie. It was slow, careful, painstaking bureaucracy. I mean, look at this 1997 letter. It's the review board coordinating with the Pentagon about Army records. And notice the subject, U.S. activities related to Cuba. This right here shows you that the JFK Act opened the door to secrets far, far beyond what happened in Dallas. And this memo, wow, this really shows you how sensitive these files were. It's scheduling a 4-day joint declassification session between the CIA and the review board. I mean, think about that for a second. We're talking 35 years after the events, and you've still got multiple government agencies carefully negotiating what the public can and cannot see. What on earth could require that kind of careful handling after so many decades? Well, buried deep inside those files, they found the answer. It was a top-secret proposal endorsed by the highest levels of the U.S. military with a code name that sounds like it was ripped straight out of a spy novel, Operation Northwoods. And this is it, the actual document. Look at the date, March 13th, 1962. Now look who it's from, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We're talking the uniformed leaders of the entire U.S. military. And who is it for? The Secretary of Defense. The subject line says it all. Justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba. This was not some low-level, crazy idea. This went right to the very top. So how are they planning on justifying an invasion? The idea was to create what they called pretexts, basically staged events that would give them the green light for a full-scale war with Cuba. The proposals included things like starting riots near the Guantanamo Bay base, conducting fake funerals for fake victims, and even cooking up a phony terror campaign on American soil. The details in here are just chilling. The document explicitly says they could create a Remember the Maine incident. For those who don't know, that's a direct reference to the event that kicked off the Spanish-American War. They were literally proposing to attack their own ship and blame it on Cuba, just to start a war. And it gets worse. Believe it or not, the plan wasn't just limited to military targets. It proposed staging actual acts of terrorism against American civilians in American cities and then blaming it all on Castro. The whole goal was to create this massive public outrage that would demand military action. And then you get to what is maybe the most shocking proposal in the whole document. A detailed step-by-step plot to fake the downing of a civilian airliner. The plan even noted that the passengers could be, say, a group of college students on their way to a vacation, to really maximize the emotional impact. Just unbelievable. And this wasn't just some vague, half-baked idea. Oh no. The document lays out the exact mechanics of how they'd pull it off. An aircraft at Eglin Air Force Base would be painted to look like a duplicate of a real civilian plane. Then, the real plane, full of passengers, would be swapped mid-flight with a drone replica, which would then be blown up over the ocean. This was a fully thought-out operational plan. Now, as completely shocking as Operation Northwoods is, the declassified files show that it wasn't some isolated one-off thing. It was actually part of a much bigger pattern of covert planning and brainstorming sessions, all aimed at provoking a war with Cuba. Take a look at this memo, for example. It's from February 1962, just 1 month before Northwoods. It's literally a list of ideas in support of project, a whole collection of covert operations they were kicking around. This proves it was a consistent, institutional effort to come up with these kinds of schemes. And the code names. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's a wild ride. You've got Operation Smasher to knock out Cuban communications, Operation Dirty Trick to blame Cuba if a Mercury space launch failed, Operation Good Times, which was a psychological op using fake photos of Castro, and my personal favorite, Operation Hornswoggle, a plan to lure Cuban aircraft into a trap. Seriously, Hornswoggle. So all of this, it brings us right back to where we started. The existence of a documented, high-level plan, like Operation Northwoods, a plan that was only rejected by civilian leadership, not by the military who came up with it. It forces us to go back to that original question about secrecy, trust, and what it means to live in an open society. And here is where this story takes an absolutely fascinating turn. Remember Sunstein and Remuel, the guys who gave us our academic definition? Well, in the very same paper, they make a pretty stunning policy recommendation. They argue that governments should secretly engage in what they call cognitive infiltration of groups that believe in conspiracy theories, to basically undermine them from the inside. The irony here, as philosopher David Cody points out, is just incredible. The proposed cure for people's distrust of the government is for the government to engage in a secret, deceptive conspiracy against its own citizens. I mean, it's a strategy that, if it ever came out, would just validate the very suspicions it was supposed to get rid of in the first place. And that really brings us to the final crucial question. When we can literally hold the declassified proof of a plan like Operation Northwoods in our hands, when a theory becomes a documented fact, what is the proper role for public skepticism in a democracy? How do we balance trust in our institutions with the knowledge of what can be planned in secret? You know, that's a question we're thinking about.